Call the Plymouth Elementary School Board meeting to order for January 4th, 2021. Have to read, as was Vice Chair of the Plymouth School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the Governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. For this January 4th, 2021 school board meeting, we are utilizing Zoom meeting for this electronic meeting. You can find the Zoom information on the SAU website, which is www.sau48.org. It's also posted on the door of the school. If you're not able to access this meeting, please contact Tanya Orlando at torlando@pennybaker.org. If the public cannot access this meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. Item 1, agenda review and disposition.
I just have a few things to add to the agenda.
Okay.
Under discussion items, I have the audit approval. Under other business, I also have under correspondence an email from Scott Whedon, the Emergency Management Director, that I want to share with the board in regards to testing wastewater for the presence of COVID. So they wanted some representation there. So I just wanted to share it with you.
Okay. Okay.
And
excuse me, what is his role?
he's the Emergency Management Director for the town of Plymouth.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
Okay. Anything else? No. Okay. Has everyone been able to review the minutes of the December 14th meeting? And if so, can we have, if they agree, a motion to accept them and second it?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting from
December 14th.
December 14th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The privilege of the floor, number 1. Would anyone like to speak? Anyone on Zoom like to speak?
Hello.
Hey, John.
Hi, this is John Marinowski, 8th grade parent. And I'm wondering, we heard that the high school was going to allow 2 spectators at the basketball games. And I'm wondering if the elementary school could potentially follow suit with 2 spectators per game, potentially, you know, putting folks in the bleachers and or the cafeteria for spectating. So I just wanted to throw it out there and see what y'all thought.
I think you could take it under advisement.
Yeah.
We can talk about it.
Sure. I haven't heard anything about the guidelines.
For clarification, is that 2 spectators per player?
So it's you can modify it in several different ways. Right now, the high school is a much bigger gym, so they have 2 spectators for home and away participants
per
for basketball.
Okay.
Per player.
Per player.
So right now, all of the elementary schools do not have spectators. You know, some schools have 2 just for participants at home. Some have 2 for both. This gym is much smaller. So it's just something that we could talk a little bit about maybe under the COVID discussion item.
Sure.
Great, thank you. I was thinking due to the size of the school, maybe 2 parents from Plymouth only might be a strategy, but just an idea.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We'll talk. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Principal's report.
So I have a brief report as we met fairly recently on December 14th. We have, again, about 401 students, although we do have 3 students who are returning from virtual to in-person, and 1 expected new enrollee this week. I do want to let the community know we are advertising and requesting for enrollment notification for pre-K, K, and first grade for next year. Because of the unpredictability and so many parents of young students have chosen to not enroll kids or have them in homeschool status, we're requesting formally that people notify us if they plan to enroll their child for next year. We are going to send letters to all of the area preschools and childcare centers, and we are going to put a notice in the Enterprise, and we're going to put it up on Facebook that we really would request notification because we think our numbers may not represent people in the community.
How are you gonna go, like, they just call the school and tell?
They're going to call Jenny Lee and notify her. We're not tying anyone to that, we're just trying to get better numbers. Want to let you know that our January theme is curiosity, trying to help kids develop a sense of question for things they're curious about, specifically why questions, and we'll be working during morning meeting and in classrooms on that. We continue to work on math pacing and mid-year assessments under curriculum instruction and assessment. Want to let you know that there's a PTA meeting this Wednesday night at 6 p.m. The link is on the website. And want to thank all of the parents for the support during the holidays, for the classroom parties and the gifts that were donated. We had a successful flea market, and the middle school students went down to the senior center, and PSU donated students from PSU donated an immense amount of gifts to kids in this building. And we would really like to say thank you to our community for looking out for students. I did want to let the board know that we are planning winter activities as opposed to winter programming. And Jen Weatherby has developed a plan with Parks and Rec and ADAPT, the Alta group, to do 2 days for K through 4. January 2nd to 19th for K through 2, and January 14th and 21st for 3rd and 4th graders. Will involve snow sculptures and sledding and snowshoeing and winter tracking. And then for 5th through 8th graders, we will have a plan for February. So we're dividing and conquering a little bit, and many of the same activities will be available for the middle schoolers, but with some expanded winter carnival raucous fun in the backfield for the older kids. And some ongoing projects I wanted the board to be aware of. We are looking at the schedule in the building and whether or not we will continue with a 6-day schedule or move to a 5-day week schedule for next year. Looking at our use of time in terms of intervention blocks. We're going about that with a survey of the teachers first, and then a group of people who've been involved in developing the schedule for many years are going to use that survey and some research we've done nationally to develop a plan that really best fits our kids' needs. We have an active search committee that's receiving applications for the openings in the building. And we are working with the virtual learning students on engagement. So we've got an engagement bags that we're going to drop off at all of those houses of the virtual learners, and looking at different programs, GradPoint and VLAX, to try to make sure those kids are progressing as much as our in-person learners. And in the middle school, we're still working on the dress code, but we're also going to start to work on civil discourse in the middle school, and how we have dialogue and discourse that is meaningful and respectful at the same time. Not political necessarily, but respectful. So that's my update.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So I remember last time I thought you said for your in-service, you did something with the math, and you were saying there was you weren't sure if the scores were, kids weren't doing I don't know, math facts or something. Did you guys come up with some sort of intervention? Or?
So what we did is we've we are in our first year of piloting Into Math,
Mhm.
and we looked at pacing for that program during the faculty meeting.
Right.
But we decided we wanted to add a piece around fluency. So we've started using the Moby Max program to look at an expectation at a certain amount of time each week that each student at each grade level would be required, or, you know, the expectation for practice in that. We're also looking at some enrichment for students who are above level math students to see how we can make sure that we are challenging them, because we have both of those situations.
And my other question is in regards to, you said the search for openings, so I know,
We have anticipated openings.
so we're keeping that, the anticipated openings that we know right now too. Okay,
We wanted to advertise early in the year.
Yeah.
As I know you're aware, the pool is best at the beginning, so we didn't want to wait until the spring to request applications for that.
Tanya, I have a question. It's Amy. Are you doing any sort of like for remote learning, are you gauging by testing where they're at and how they're doing? Or is there any sort of process for that, making sure that it's students or should be on track? And how's that? What are you using?
So we are primarily have been using MobiMax, which is our digital platform, which gives a base level test in the very beginning, and then throughout the time you can retest and see if skill development is occurring. The program is based on minutes of time that people have spent on the program predominantly. Some students get through things very quickly, and some students can not use their time wisely and put in a lot of time, but maybe not progress. So we're working at fine tuning how we look at their growth.
Perfect. Thank you.
I don't think we have anything really to note for
Yeah,
safety.
I don't have too much to report just because we're in between seasons, but 7-8 basketball will open up with their games this week. They're over at Campton tomorrow and at Ashland on Thursday. And then we've got another safety committee meeting coming up this Wednesday. And wrestling will start their practices tomorrow.
was there any update from the
NHIA.
that's the one.
Nothing more that I'm aware of. We are wearing masks during practice and during events. It's one of the pieces that they did. Make sure that's going on, but. And at this point, I still don't have any matches scheduled for wrestling.
Thank you.
Okay. Consent items, claims and payroll,
That is making its way across
okay.
the tables.
And correspondence,
Yeah, so I just wanted to share with you from Scott Wheaton a email that I received that I was just talking about. So I'll just read it, and then the request is that a board member to jump on the meeting for more information. So he says, I've been meeting with Plymouth Water and Sewer Department with regards to the testing of wastewater for the presence of COVID. There is a summarization document that I have attached that I can send to all of you if you would like it, of the conversation we had, as it will provide detail on how Plymouth Water and Sewer have been conducting the testing and the impact the testing could have. I would like to invite you or any representatives of the board to a selectmen's meeting on January 11th at 5 p.m. to further the conversation. I plan to have the university, Spear, and the Plymouth School District and Hemi Baker School District as well at the meeting. I learned a lot from Dr. Ebner as he brought this to my attention at the Board of Selectmen meeting 2 weeks ago when he provided an update from the hospital perspective. So I think it's informational. They just wanted to put it out there to all of you to listen in.
You
if you
know,
would like.
you understand about it, because I don't really
Not,
understand.
I would not claim to be at all an expert in any of that.
I just know, I had heard that like New Hampton School does that. I just didn't understand it really.
I don't know too much of the details on it. I have the summary that I can send to all of you,
Yeah.
but I just didn't know if anybody's interested in going. I would just have a few
Well,
reps going.
I'll go to that meeting.
I'll try.
Perfect.
What did you say? What's the date? January 11th?
January 11th at 5.
Okay.
It's Zoom.
It's Zoom.
So I believe their
Zoom.
information, yeah, I think it's on their website.
Okay.
They typically post there. So it's just something Amy can listen in on, and Fred said he might want to touch base too. It's just to be a voice at the table and to listen in on what's happening.
Does it, in the document that he sent, does it share what the relevance is with testing waste? I'm not familiar with it. Is it like a indicator of infection rate?
The prevalence of COVID in your community, I think.
So my understanding, based on the reports I've heard on the radio, is just that by testing wastewater, they can determine if there are any students or staff in the school that are positive, they would see positive results in the wastewater, and it would be an indication of.
But they're not testing site specific, so it's
Yeah.
a town, they're only
It
testing
would
at the,
be, yeah,
for the
So-
community as a whole, so
Well,
it,
it's not site specific.
correct.
Interesting.
And it's
That
only
would-
gonna be obviously for somebody who's on the
On
water
public.
and sewer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
My understanding is like one of the testing sites is on Tenny Mountain before it gets to the plant, before it gets treated.
It seems
then
like it
there's
would
a-
have very little relevance,
Mhm.
actionable information in my,
So
but it
it's
probably
just-
wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. It was one of those, I won't claim to know anything about it.
There was
So
this
I-
idea, like on college campuses, for example, you can figure out what building it was in based on sewage flow. It doesn't sound like, now that still doesn't narrow it down to a certain individual, but it narrows it down to a smaller population. Doesn't sound like this is that. It is interesting. I wonder what we're gonna do with the data,
I don't,
right.
but. there
I
might
think
be
as a
lot-
community, it might allow you, my understanding, and I happen to live with someone who knows a little bit more about this, is that it might let the community know 5 to 7 days in advance of the need to ramp up the health care, or, to activate a health site or something like that.
There might be a lot more than we think when we're gonna start digging, like, oh my God, look at how much COVID there is here.
yeah. So it's something to listen in on. I don't, I just wanted to share that with you. So Amy
Okay.
and,
Sounds interesting.
yeah,
If it's a Zoom.
And I
if
just sent you guys the email too, that from Kyla original with the attachment, so you can review it.
thank you.
Is that it for correspondence?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion items, COVID-19 update.
So the only two pieces I have is that we were going to talk about allowing students from the SAU to participate in wrestling.
Mhm.
Is that the only one?
Yeah, I think so. We've had a few from Nordic in the past, but not so far.
So- Just a,
Not basketball. Everybody has their own team. We've
Not
never-
both of us.
We haven't had SAU students.
Would we not open it up also to students that are homeschooled or remote learning or charter school for
Yeah,
athletics?
we always have.
They have.
So there is potential.
Right, as long as they're
Yeah.
in Plymouth district,
yeah.
homeschool, charter school.
Sure.
So I just need consensus if you're okay with us opening up. They follow the same screening
Yes.
pieces and
Yes.
and all of our reentry plan
Yes.
mitigation strategies. So yes, yes, Fran?
I'm abstaining, I don't
Okay.
like that.
Yes.
You can say no. It's
I
okay.
have just said no.
Amy?
Yeah, yes for me.
And then the other piece, if you want to discuss this or you want to leave the decision up to Tanya and Kelly on fans, that's fans in the gym, that's typically
I would think it would be hard for us to regulate where our parents can attend other schools. But I would think it would be easy for us to set a building precedent to say that if we have a home game, we can allow one or two parents of both our team and away teams if there's room. But I don't know. I would just leave it in your hands.
Just see where they're at.
And we didn't allow it for the younger kids, correct?
None of the other elementary schools are allowing fans at this point in the
Yeah.
SAU.
Okay. And did we find out about streaming the games?
It's $1,500, $1,500 for us to, and we would have to buy equipment to do that, so.
Okay. So Pemmy Baker won't stream the games.
I did not ask Pemmy Baker, that wasn't I can reach out to them and ask.
I mean, it might be worth an ask to them to see if they'll stream the games. I personally would prefer that over having people in the gym, but that's my opinion. I'll leave it up to you guys, but whatever you think. But I feel like if we didn't do it in the fall, then we shouldn't, do it in the spring or winter rather.
Outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
But no fans for the 5-6 basketball thus far. So we did have fans in the fall, but none for winter sports other than.
Right.
Everything is outside. Like Nordic ski can have fans.
Yeah, correct.
The only experience I can relate is that all of the hockey arenas that I've been spending a lot of time in lately have spacing so that like there are dots on the glass every 6 feet where people are, or where parties are allowed to stand if you came together. So we might want to just do an assessment of our facility to lay out how much space we have for people and even include the cafeteria to say, how many people could stand at the window at the cafeteria. And, if we think there's enough to accommodate one parent per player, we could consider opening that up. But I would rather not make that decision. I'd rather allow Tanya and Kelly to make that decision.
I think it's just gonna be a difficult thing to monitor. I don't know who's gonna do that. You, Kelly?
Well, I think it's also difficult if we're looking at granted, all the other schools in the SAU we all follow the same guidelines, but if we open it up and we're playing outside, I don't know if we're playing outside of the SAU with any of the.
We are, and no
basketball
one's
games.
allowing spectators.
So
None of the
Yeah.
schools we have on our.
we kind of ran into this a little bit in the fall too, didn't we? I remember some schools were not allowing, I think Kennett wasn't allowing spectators, but others were, even for soccer games.
They're all
So-
over the map. I mean, they
Yeah.
really, even at the high school level, there
Yeah.
are 2 per home, no fans, everybody is doing something different. So
Right.
there's really no pattern.
Yeah.
It's whatever the district wants to do.
My opinion is we've done a good job thus far of containing whatever infection there is out there, and we should be uniform with that. So
Okay.
I'd love to see go watch sports and have the kids have their parents there, but we have to protect the building. We have to do that too.
Sure.
I agree.
I'm comfortable with that. I don't think that there's in a perfect world, I would love to have parents come in, but with cases going up, I think as much as I would love to allow that, I just think it's probably not the best decision at this point. I think, I don't know that we want to be the outlier either, if no one else is doing it. I mean, there's some challenges associated with that, so as much as I would like to have parents here, it's the best decision.
Amy, any thoughts?
No, I've shared my opinion. That I think it's just not a good idea.
Why don't we hold off for now? I just don't feel like,
Sure.
Yeah.
there's a lot of movement.
I will ask Pemmy Baker.
Yeah.
And we'll see if there's some options for streaming at least, so get a few gigs in. So no fans, that consensus across the board?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm okay with that.
I didn't know if any of you had questions with returning to school. That's something we're gonna follow the same plan we've been following. Vaccinations have become available for our school nurses and any allied health professionals such as speech pathologists and occupational therapists. So that is been rolled out. That's all I know. That we're really not getting too much further into it. So we're just holding on for right now.
So the word on staff can.
We have not received any word. My understanding is that right now, K to 12 educators and staff are in phase 2. But the most recent guidelines with the vaccination, there seems to be a phase 1A, B, C. So I don't know and I don't know if that will change, and I think it just depends on the amount that comes in and the availability and the plan, I guess. So we're just waiting. I don't have any real clear information on that from the state level at this point. But we will just keep on responding as needed and continue to be in person. Like I said, if there's sporadic cases, we will go to remote if we need to for a couple of days, depending on when the exposure is. And then if there is a cluster, it's more of an extended time, but it doesn't necessarily mean a full 2 weeks. It could be just an extended time, again, depending on the exposure.
Yeah, my recollection was that there was something that the parents have to notify you if a child was out of New England during the holidays.
That's part of our daily screener. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that if you're out of New England, you have to quarantine for 10 days, or you can quarantine for a week and get a PCR test on the 7th day to come back.
Which will take a few days.
Which ends up being like 10 days anyways.
So I'm curious, did we have any numbers there?
We have had folks that traveled.
Okay, so you have, I feel like people have adhered to our requirements, I guess.
And we are addressing it if we
Suspect.
have a whisper that there may have been some travel. So Kelly and I are following up on information that we need to follow up on. I will say our attendance today, I think we had
17, I think, overall.
yeah, and some of them came in late, so less than that.
17 absences.
Yeah, that's low.
Yeah.
That's very low.
Okay.
And some of those kids came in late, so.
So
Yeah, it seems high to me, but if that's normal, that's fine. We lacking context.
yes, yes,
400.
Thank you.
400. That's a particularly low, actually.
Okay.
That's all I have. Anything else or no?
Thank you. Budget draft number 2.
So I have a few handouts for you tonight. One of the requests from the board, for those of you watching in public, was to come back with possible reductions or options that the board can discuss. So Tanya and I went through the budget with everything we could and tried to figure out how we can save on a few items. So your green sheet in front of you. There's the first piece is that you have 2 retirements in the regular ed account, which is the 1,100. So we did, as one option is you can reduce one of them, which would increase class sizes in one of the specific grades. And that the numbers there is associated, so that the benefits there are included. So you have the salary in there plus the benefits. The other piece we were able to save on is we were able to take out $14,700 for Chromebooks to cover with the CARES Money Act. So we are able to cover that with the grant. So that we took right out. We spoke to our special ed director, and just recently there has been a change in placement for special education with a savings of $70,000. We were able to take $70,000 out of the tuition line for special education, which is always, as you know, a moving part. The other piece we were able to take out was $14,999 for the floor machine and the rug extractor, which also fall under the allowable pieces for the CARES money. So we're able to buy that with our current CARES money at this
So,
point.
okay, our current care. so-
Yeah, we're just gonna buy it. Yeah, you can take it out and it's covered in the
No
grant.
longer becomes a budget item because it's
Any
already here.
update on CARES money or more money coming to us?
There's more money. They haven't figured out what the allocations will be at this point. We haven't had any guidance on it.
Okay.
So we have used it to cover some of our remote positions, mostly for staffing.
Okay.
There are a number of substitutes in this building, as well as a couple of remote positions that we've had to back in. This, it's not budgeted for. So that's what the majority of this money went to. But this is from the additional supplemental CARES money, the Chromebooks and more of the technology and stuff like that. There are additional considerations if you would like to look at reducing the number more, but the total that we came up with to reduce the budget is $183,929. So it brings it down quite a bit. You had asked me to make a list of the positions or programs that are optional and not part of minimum requirements. So I've made a list right there, anything from some of your specials to contracted services, such as the after-school program, school resource officer. The exterior painting is something we had talked about. STEM, reduction of the FTE of the reading writing specialist. That is a requirement as per minimum standards. The only thing you could do there is reduce that full-time position. And then world language is always something you're looking at. But again, that's cutting programs. So we thought the best way to go about this without it affecting any individual or additional programs were to reduce the 1,100 accounts, so regular classroom teacher, by one full-time equivalency.
If hypothetically, we were to not replace either of the two retirements, would that reduction that you have on lines 1 through 7 just double?
Yes.
But that's a first and a second grade teacher.
Well, it
could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere. The most likely, the lowest class size based on the projection you've given us is first grade. If we were to, the next likely candidate would be 2 classes of 17 for first grade. And
There's a
perhaps
document in front of you that looks like this.
based on our current kindergarten enrollment, but we may see more kindergarten.
Yeah,
We may
I
see more
think
first
that's
graders
the,
next year, which
Right.
we may want to budget for that and see what we get in the next few weeks based on.
Tyler, can you remind the exterior painting, what's the amount on that?
50,000.
So, yeah, so
Yeah.
we could put that off and almost equal a reduction of another full-time.
There's not that much exterior to paint here.
Yeah, it's $50,000.
Well, and
You gonna come to this one?
Yeah.
What's that?
You gonna
Hey,
come to
party.
Come do it. I would, yeah.
and we also,
you can also take
See
the
where we're at.
risk of seeing what is left over at the end of the year.
Yeah, we don't have to
And cut
budget.
it for, but you don't know.
We don't
I
have to
mean,
budget for it if we have unreserved funds,
But it,
unallocated or
Correct.
unutilized funds, we could
yes,
take care of that.
so that's something if you wanted to take a
Yeah,
risk.
I'm okay with that.
either this year or next year.
Yes.
For the painting.
For the painting,
Yeah, I mean,
that's me.
my opinion of all of these, the thing I'd like to see cut.
It
of
is
that
certainly,
List is, the thing that can get put off the easiest is exterior paint.
although sometimes putting off $50,000 worth of painting this year becomes $60,000 worth of painting next year because additional prep work is required, but
Could be,
but it
but it could also be a
can
year
happen.
that we have more money next
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
We're facing a big shortfall this year.
I'm not disagreeing, I'm just discussing.
Sure.
Can I have something to clarify? So I'm trying to understand the budget sheet. So if we looked at the revenue last time, what is my understanding correct in that we are gonna have over $700,000 less in revenue? Is that right?
That year.
Yeah.
It's almost,
721,406,
so,
less than revenue.
correct. And you have to remember, the first part is, as far as the unreserved fund balance that was given out is kind of a false spike. So you gave back over $300,000 to help offset the taxes. So that piece jumps up, you're already making up 17,000. Just,
Okay.
So we're really looking at a $400,000 increase.
and you did lose, you
Or
lost
decrease.
adequacy.
We lost a lot of adequacy money.
Adequacy is something which we anticipated. And then some of the other pieces in your revenue sheet from last year are the security upgrades and the energy savings project that are just one-time revenue costs. So it kind of skews that revenue side for this year only.
Right.
I anticipate it will even out at next year.
I'm just trying to understand it, because then I was like, okay, so then our district appropriation was up by 324. So that makes it look like it's up by over $1 million.
Yeah, it could be interpreted that way, yes.
I'm just trying to
So
do a clarification, because I think there's some kind of misunderstanding about that, and I'm trying to understand it myself. So.
I mean, with the reductions that I proposed, that puts your appropriations up about 1.5%.
Okay.
So instead of being up over 300,000, it brought you up 140,000,
Okay.
320.
Okay.
Take that and you can explain the revenue side, then that's something that a little bit more palatable. I think it's going to be, I understand how tough it is too, but that, just the balance in revenue, it's a one-time piece on most of your revenue pieces.
Just, when you're in the town and our
Yeah.
job is, people are gonna be
I
asking
think
us. I'm like,
absolutely.
oh my God.
That is one of our major responsibilities on this board. So yes.
Are there any questions on the class size, please?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I know kindergarten typically is the most challenging to predict, right?
Correct.
So right now, we think 28, and then 34 in first grade. And then the fourth grade class would be with 28. Those are the three smallest.
Mhm.
Okay. And all the rest of them are close to 15, 16 per class with 3 teachers.
Sixth grade has 14 and 13. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, they're not 10, 11, I guess is what.
they're not 10 and 11.
Yeah, I mean,
But the-
we're looking at 9 in
Kindergarten's
9,
28,
13,
first
right?
grade's
Right, yes.
34.
Correct,
First grade is
correct.
supposed to
Yes,
be
Those are
yes.
the three that
Yep.
kind of say
If those numbers.
what's the right
Yeah,
size.
if we,
Yeah.
so there's already, there's a grayed out box in the second column where in third grade, that's one of the positions, but if we did not hire a replacement for the second retirement, that would also, I know that it seems like kindergarten is one of those places where it's good to have smaller class sizes, especially in kindergarten. And, jumping into first grade, I'm sure there's not that much that changes in terms of wanting to have a good teacher to student ratio. But I'm thinking back to last year's 8th grade class that had 18 to 20 go through as a cohort, 18 to 20 per
21,
class.
21, 22, and 23, since I have.
Yeah, so it's not unprecedented to see a class with slightly higher numbers go through the system, and I would not object to eliminating or not hiring 2 positions next year if we're going to have to
So replacing the one,
not replacing one.
Not replacing any.
not replacing any.
Yes, that I would not object to that. I'm okay with not replacing. I'm absolutely on board with not replacing 1, and I'm proposing that we consider not replacing 2.
Where would you see the second? If
First grade. I would not have it. I would reduce the number of.
with the current numbers.
My recommendation, of course, it's up to the administration, but my recommendation it makes most sense to eliminate one of the first grade positions. There are 28 students. We're forecasting, 34, which would be, 217 student sections in first grade, which, there are, if you look down in, 8th grade, there are a couple 17s. There's an 18 in 5th. It's very much in line with our other class sizes throughout the rest of the grades.
But we wouldn't have to tell them, we would just say, down to teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, you
their
would
decision
approve
on how
it.
Ultimately, yes, yeah.
orchestrate.
I feel okay about it knowing that
Yeah.
the logistics.
There's
work
good.
out.
One of the things I remember us, and I'm not saying it's not something we should consider, but one of the things I remember us talking about in years past when we discussed increasing class sizes and reducing numbers is the difference in the needs between the primary wing, the middle school wing and the elementary wing. And that really a lot of the research focused on the need of kind of more intensive attention, I guess, in the primary wings. Did I misread that, or is that?
So typically when there's research about small class sizes, it talks about under 20 is low class sizes. Plymouth has always had smaller class sizes than under 20.
Recently.
So, yeah, not all. So, I mean, we try to keep it honestly under 20. That's the piece, you get up to 18 and 19 in any class, depending on the mix of what what's going on. It really just depends. And that you replace one, it gives us that flexibility, just in case to have, to keep those numbers where they are. You reduce 2, we can do it. It's gonna change the class makeups quite a bit, as far as an increase more than just 1 grade. So,
Tanya, what's your feeling if we have, presuming, we're going to have a cohort of students that's going to go through with smaller numbers in that grade throughout, is it difficult for teachers to bounce? If there are if next year there are 2 first grade teachers, the year after they're going to be 2 second grade teachers, will one of the second grade teachers be willing to go to first grade? Do you think there's some amount of mobility that's desired, or is that generally not?
So there's certifications K-6. So we are allowed to move within those grades to assign elementary, whatever positions within that role. So it's based on certification. There's a little bit more flexibility in middle school certification at this point. Like years ago, you went into the highly qualified piece where you had to have English language arts middle school, a certain math middle school, which now we have a little bit more flexibility. You still have to have a specialized area, but it's covered, it's more broad-based. There's a little bit more flexibility. So we do, Tanya and Kelly can assign anyone within their area of certification. Basically, so the elementary ed.
What I'm getting at is more about the opportunity for somebody who might say they've been teaching first grade for 3 years and they might want to try third, or having that provides the opportunity for mobility in a way that you wouldn't have if we had consistent 3-3-3 and nobody wanted to change, right?
So it's work to move. You learn a new curriculum. And really a new developmental stage, depending on how big the move is. I think that there are people who are interested in that for a variety of reasons, and there are some people who really aren't. And it really is an individual by individual basis. I think that we know that we have this group that's in 3rd grade now that's particularly low, and we already are going to have to shift people around. And it's going to, when that group gets to the middle school, we are going to do some pretty significant shifting, and people are going to get out of their comfort zone, is my guess. On the other hand, I'm someone who has taught in multi-grade classes. I've moved around a lot. And I believe that there's an incredible opportunity to learn, and sort of that passion for, I'm going to try this new thing, is exciting. Not everyone feels that way.
I forget their classes that are multi-grade, or their schools with multi-grade classes.
Which is another way to think about the numbers. So
Right.
another idea is if we were gonna only hire one is, do we look at a K1 mix?
Right.
Or are there things like that we might want to consider?
I think the best thing is to leave it up to the building level
Yeah.
administration to say, okay, here's where we're at in June or in May. Where do I need more staff
Mhm.
based on the numbers?
I mean, and that brings us back to our budget discussion of,
Yeah.
as a board, do we want to budget for 2 fewer FTEs in 1,100, or do we want to budget for 1 fewer FTE?
So it would be attrition, so nobody would be let go.
Correct.
Which is the easiest time.
Yes.
Right.
When we were
But you don't
looking
have
at
to
all
let
the
anybody go.
pieces, yeah, that this would not affect anybody specifically.
Not every year does somebody retire. So if there are 2 retirees this year and we decide that we want to hire someone else the year after, we have that opportunity.
So
I have a question. If we take out one of the positions and leave the funds there, but maybe based on class size numbers, we don't hire that replacement teacher, or that what happens to that money if we don't use it? Like, say, okay, we're gonna advertise for 1, but maybe we don't need it based on numbers. What
Budget for it, if you budget for it in the warrant article, then it's part of the budget.
Right. The
So
issue is that the
either-
taxes are going to be high even if you
Yeah.
don't spend it.
Right. So it either goes to an unreserved fund balance, or if something switches where you get a high needs special ed student where they absorb that piece, it's just, the board has the authority to move between the lines, so.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I mean, what I'm hearing from you folks is that we should probably not reduce both of those. Just one.
I think that would be.
That's how we just are recommending it.
So that's part of our recommendations. If you wanted to go further, we'd absolutely could discuss another position or a different specialty position. This was our recommendation based on what we're seeing right now.
Since we're putting everything on the table, throwing you a curveball, you can look at me, sorry.
That's fine. Go ahead.
But, I'm a taxpayer, I've thought long and hard about this too, is to look at our unified arts staff and to consider reassigning someone to be a classroom teacher. And to look at class size differently and to look at our specialists in unified arts differently, which I know, but, if we really want to look at things differently, that's the other way to look at those FTEs.
So it would be a way of acquiring another FTE without acquiring.
If we were to budget for a reduction of 2 FTEs from 1,100, and we found that we needed more resources, you feel like there's potential that we could?
I would need to look at it. I didn't do it for this meeting.
You would lose a program if you moved it to assignment.
Mhm.
So that's the piece we were trying to avoid,
Right.
was to
Mhm.
not lose any of the programs. But if you were really looking at a significant savings, something's got to give, right? If you're going to dig that deep,
Yeah.
something's going to give. You're either
Sure.
going to have increased class sizes or you're going to lose a program. And right
Right.
there are your optional programs as far as.
Right.
So this was our proposal to say, okay, this significantly reduces the budget. If you take the 183,929, add the 50,000 to it, that's more of a reduction. That you'll get it down below 1% as far as appropriations.
Should we go through more of the budget before we focus on this one aspect of it?
I haven't changed, this is all I
This
have.
is
all
this is
one.
the only
So
thing, okay.
I was gonna ask if you can approve a budget tonight, because you have your budget hearing on the 1st. So I was looking for approval on the reductions. If you want to discuss further, that's possible too.
So before we get to that, when you say unified arts
That's like,
Specialists, that's
All right.
He has some of them listed here, but
Okay.
not all of them.
Spanish,
These are the ones.
STEM.
Okay.
yeah,
Music,
music.
Other question,
some of them require.
Some of them are required.
no, that's fine, I
Yeah.
understand. I'm not, I don't, that, my first choice is not to remove those things.
mine are slightly off topic. On topic, but off topic. Preschool, is that a mandate or, I mean,
So it is mandated for special ed students, ages 3 through 5. So that is actually a savings for us to educate those students here.
it is, okay.
Is it not also somewhat grant funded, so isn't it almost a wash in terms
So-
of the district offering it?
It's complicated. They have, so you have your regular tuition that comes in.
So parents of non-special ed kids pay for the
Pay
kids
for it.
to go to preschool.
And then partially funded by IDEA, the preschool allocation. So half tuition that you receive, that your tuition that you see on the revenue side is in that.
But it's also a space in the building that if we wanted to expand other programs, it's something we don't have access to. Not that that's a big
The
issue this year.
cost of-
That was a bigger issue. when we were
It's a
looking at
savings for us
padding.
to run that
The
program.
cost
It's a
of
savings.
Tuitioning them out to like the
Right.
children,
She
to
knows.
college and
Yeah.
all those places is astronomical.
No, I appreciate it, I just didn't.
Because we would have to pay for the out of this, you know, whatever services are out in daycares or Head Start.
Okay, so doing it, we do it, it's cheaper than paying someone else.
Correct.
Got it. Perfect sense. Thank you.
Can I ask the school resource officer, do you have any feedback on how, has that been really helpful?
I will say for me, it is extremely useful. That position, that individual is extremely useful, following up on truancy, following up on,
Well, checks.
well checks.
Okay.
And just the link between,
The mental health.
The mental health piece.
Hospitals and
And the after-school program, there's no outside funding that we can get?
So you
for
just
that?
pay a portion of, you just pay a
Oh.
piece of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was,
that's not a
that was a
huge-
warrant article a couple of years
Yeah,
ago
that
that
was
was
voted in.
strongly supported by
Yeah.
parents,
It's just not a-
30,000, I think.
which is why it's a line item in the budget now.
Yeah.
Um,
You have very high participation rates in that program.
Yeah.
That's popular.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful program.
So putting these appropriation changes in that you prepared, and it sounds like discussion of the after-school program, the SRO is kind of settled. We need to probably look at what you had suggested as maybe relocating or reappropriating some of the specials.
No, I
No.
don't think so. No, that's only like,
Teacher.
so that's only if we need a teacher resource.
Right,
If we cut
unless we
two
cut,
out,
if we cut two.
If you
that's what
cut
we're-
two out, that's where you'd have to go if you had an influx of numbers, but you would have to remove an additional, you would lose a program either way. So you're,
and for me, I'm thinking, oh, well, 50,000 for painting, we could cut that. But then I'm also looking at your change in special ed, the placement, and I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, well, let's just keep that if we have to.
that's
Not use the
directly linked to an
painting and make-
individual.
Huh?
It's just, I want you to know, that's directly linked to a specific individual.
yeah,
Correct, no, I understand that, that's why I'm saying no, but if something, one person moves out, somebody else can move in.
Yes.
Is the-
Essentially.
That's my only, you know.
but there's way to cover that in an
So-
emergency situation.
Correct,
In the
For steps.
past,
correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
in the past, we carried the greeting specialist as a warrant, separate warrant issue
Last year, yeah.
last year. I'm wondering if we should budget for 2 fewer positions and put a warrant for the extra position. I mean, it gets messy, I guess.
Put a warrant for what?
Yeah, I don't
For-
think
for a
that's
replacement
wise to do,
FTE.
because then you have the whole town
Yeah.
making that
No,
decision.
yeah,
I wouldn't,
probably
I
not
wouldn't go with
necessary.
that.
Well,
Yeah, anything can happen at a
Yeah.
district meeting. They can take out more or put
Yeah.
in more. Vote in,
Right.
I mean, it's just one of those, that's the authority, and there is no cap to it. You can take as much out or put back
Right.
in.
the
But it's
chat,
up to you to, I mean, it's up to it's the school
Sure.
board's budget, is what to do with that.
Just as a matter, the reading specialist for us has been a new position just this past year. Feedback on,
I would strongly, extremely strongly recommend that we keep that position.
I would agree.
And
I agree, yeah.
regardless of where we go with class size,
Yeah.
tier 2 supports for reading are critical for our ultimate success as a building.
And it really is a required position. You can mess with the full-time equivalency, but for a school this size, it's very normal to have a full-time reading specialist.
and yeah, I'm good with that.
You're not the only board going through this year, I promise you that.
I mean, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm thinking, well, it could be done without it being, I mean, I'm definitely think one, but as far as two goes, but then I'm like, why don't we just not do the painting and at least
Or
instead of
So-
the staff?
I'm considering not doing the painting and not,
Oh, you're
I'm
doing nothing
considering both.
and
I
another
mean, as-
staff.
as-
You know, an
realistic
option is to
possibilities.
always reduce it by one, add the painting in or whatever to the budget hearing and see what you get for feedback from the public. And there's always a chance that you get feedback or people feel comfortable with that piece or want you to dig a little deeper. I mean, that's something you can also consider.
my concern about pulling too much from any one budget is that, you know, like the issue that the town of Plymouth had last year, they had deferred so much that they had to put a bond forward in order to accomplish all the things that should have been regular maintenance. You know, I'd rather keep our budget robust enough that we don't have to change it too much from year to year, that we always account for some element of building maintenance if needed, you know, fairly level funding for staff salaries and teaching positions. But at the same time, you know, if I guess my question is, do we anticipate that revenue is going to continue in a downward trend, or is this
I would
a one-time?
anticipate, yes,
Yeah.
it's gonna be in a downward trend.
So in that case, I'm thinking it doesn't make sense to bend over backwards to try and accommodate a decrease this year. We should just plan for what we need, and next year we'll have to do the same. And you know, there's some belt tightening that has to happen, but you know, the other thing that has to happen is, you know, if state funding is being reduced, then local funding needs to pick up the slack. And you know, if it's not coming from the state and the school district still needs it, it needs to come from local sources. So I'm okay with moving forward. I guess the question for the board is, you know, what do we want to do with something like the 450 line for construction services, which is painting? Do we want to include that?
Don't we have some money in the capital? Didn't we put aside 50 grand last year into the capital improvement?
yep, and it was spent. Whoops.
It was 50 grand, right?
Yep.
So is there a reason we can't take that 50,000 out of that account to pay for the painting?
I think the understanding, you could correct me if I'm wrong, that was for more of the bigger projects, like you know, an updated HVAC system or something like that, where this is just regular scheduled maintenance,
Yeah.
that if you have the funds at the end of the year,
Right.
maybe you could do it that way, or you plan for it for next year, within the appropriations.
Okay.
We're going to have capital expenditures in the future where, you know, we should probably, realistically, we should be putting money into the capital reserve this year in addition to
Right.
doing the other regular building maintenance that we should be doing.
So Phil, were you saying you agreed with the proposed cuts plus the painting?
Um,
I'm just trying to,
I was trying to foster discussion
okay, all right,
amongst the board.
yeah.
The only thing that I can see is if we did do cut 2, you'd have to do the K1 combo.
Be trickier with the assignments. You're absolutely
The
right.
assignment part, right, I know, it's not my job to do that. Just because I'm just looking like that, you know, the others. I don't know how you even do it.
Isla, by bringing down what you eliminated, what does that bring us bottom line? Like, what's the percentage increase? Because it was like 3.5.
Yeah, so it is 1.5% on the appropriation side.
Okay.
So it's 140,320 increase instead of the over 300,000 one.
Okay. Which is more reasonable. I'm happy with what you guys proposed.
I would be happy with just the one staff, but not do the painting and hope and take a risk that we'll have money left over that we can use for the painting. So
So-
take that out too.
And all the other pieces that we put in
Just
there.
keep the others how it is up here, and then also eliminate 50.
And add painting to that reduction list.
Correct.
Remove the 405 line from the budget.
So the proposed, what I'm hearing is proposed reductions plus the 50,000 for the painting. And we'll take the risk on that.
Yep.
So
How
that,
bad is the, like, what's the projected, we should pay last year, we should pay now, we should pay next year? What's it look like? Like, what's the status of the paint, for lack of a better term?
we
How much
have,
risk do we run by waiting a year maybe and having the same debate next year? I don't know.
But we could take money.
I mean, you might have funds at the end of this year, but you
Yeah.
might
Right.
not.
If there's
what I mean.
unreserved funds,
We
we
can
can
take it-
still.
We see where we are.
Cross our
So we can
fingers.
take it out and maybe have enough to do it.
Correct.
The 10-year plan that John gave you 2 meetings ago has some long-range costs. We don't want to continue to delay, because
So just so you know, the painting was in the 2021 budget. He had that initially in that, so it's already been put out another year. So it would be for the 21-22. So it was in,
It's
it
already
looks
been
like it was pushed out already by 1 year, so. There's no other painting I see in the next 10 years.
but there are other things.
Oh, there's other things, but as far as the exterior building,
Yeah, the HVAC system is as old as the building, and he suggested that all needs to be replaced, which is a big, if you recall, when we started dealing with COVID and schools were looking at retrofitting HVAC systems to existing buildings, they were looking at like $1 million+ price tags. So maintaining what we have and replacing it with current is still a value.
And putting money into the capital reserve
Yes.
for that.
So we don't have anything going into capital reserve with this budget, do we?
no, you would put that on a separate warrant article like you did last year.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
had
Oh, right.
leftover funds, remember that was one of the, so I have your draft warrants to
Yes.
discuss as well.
Contingency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I would move that we go forward with the budget as proposed, with the only change being that we strike the $50,000 that's under 4,600, 450 construction services.
so you're approving draft budget 2 with an additional reduction of $50,000 to take out the
Yes,
painting.
that is my motion.
Okay.
With the understanding that if we have money left over at the end.
We
Yeah,
can, we
that's-
can
it
still
may be
undertake,
something.
yeah, this is just a budget. It doesn't mean we can't do that. It just means that we're not gonna budget money to do it unless there's some left over.
Okay.
So
I would second that. I don't know.
Mo-
Are we
motion-
voting or
so-
not?
Yeah, you have to vote on this. Yeah.
motions are still, so as a point of order, this is the time to discuss. So don't feel like we have to vote at this point.
Mhm.
No,
If anybody wants to discuss this, there's still time.
I agree with what Phil proposed. I'd also like to further investigate what Tanya proposed as well.
With which
With
reallocating positions.
reallocating positions.
You mean to take out a second teacher?
If.
Or
if-
not, it's not take out, it's
Right.
due to attrition, not,
Right.
Right.
not
but if
hiring.
if we're budgeting for one replacement and there's clearly not need in fourth grade for one, there's really no need to reallocate those positions either, right?
I think that's if we went two.
What?
I think that's if you
Yeah,
reduced it by
We were only,
two.
but we were only doing one.
One.
Yeah,
I
one,
misunderstood. So-
Okay.
Yeah, no, as
Yeah.
proposed, there's there's one
Only
replacement
one.
position.
Sorry.
in.
I strike that.
Strike that discussion.
Yes, don't.
Okay.
There is potential that it's not gonna be a huge savings, but likely whoever comes in to replace one of these teachers is probably gonna be younger, newer, and less.
The positions in the budget are
Figured out there.
already figured out that way.
Yeah. I said that last time.
You did it.
Yeah.
And I was just.
I was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amy,
I
do you
get
have thoughts?
nervous with staff, that people move in and boom, all of a sudden you're in a.
Is, can I ask, to Mike's point, the amount, the salary amount that's listed in the 1,100 account for the one staff reduction, is that,
The bachelor's plus 5 years of experience per our CBA with I believe a 2-person
Yeah.
health insurance.
okay, is that less than what we're currently replacing?
Yes.
Okay,
But with the increase in retirement,
right.
that line item,
And they reduce the staff, the health already,
Yes.
the health
Yeah,
insurance,
yeah,
so they're anticipating.
okay.
less cost there.
I will second Phil's motion since we haven't had.
Fran, be
I
sure.
already
Oh,
seconded,
no, it's all right. I'm not paying attention.
but we can discuss more.
No.
Did Amy have any concerns? Do you want to discuss anything?
No, I agree with proposed. I would prefer to have a larger class size versus cutting any unified art. And the only unified art that I would be more comfortable if we had to, move something would be to be Spanish versus anything else. But I'm happy with what they've come up with. Minus $50K for painting.
So Amy, just for discussion's sake, with one replacement, it seems like we'll be able to fund it. You have 3 sessions of every grade except fourth grade?
well, no, that's already it.
That's already a two.
That's all right.
And then there would be another grade where there was only 2.
Okay, right. Okay, all right, I see what you mean.
Because that still keeps all class sizes under the 20 average. Correct? Yeah. So
Without need.
I'm happy with that.
Want to call a vote, Frank?
Mhm.
Want to call a vote?
Oh, sorry.
I think that's it for discussion.
All right. All those in favor?
All right.
Bye.
Very good. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Very good. So that will be, for the hearing, I will have draft 3 with all those, with the additional painting removed from there, so it'd be
So
less
there's a
than.
total reduction from what we had, you had 183,929, plus we had the 50, so it's 233,929.
And then I will, we'll post draft 3 up on the website and send it out to everyone, so you have what's the most current one for the budget hearing.
For the budget hearing, are you going, Who explains the reduction in our revenue?
I'll go over the
You
whole
do
thing.
that, all that? Okay.
I'll present.
Or,
the whole-
or Frank?
Right. I typically we just presented the budget with the revenue and then we open it up for questions. And I typically do that. Sometimes Tanya or Kelly will jump in on the daily operations of something if there's a question on that.
I just feel like
And Dan
this
Roster
is
comes.
such a huge amount. I mean, to have that kind of reduction in revenue is just, tied our hand to this budget process. It's just, and obviously then we had the increases that we knew were coming for retirement and health, but still just crazy.
It is.
Bad news.
I have a couple, I would like to, we can move on to
Other
a
business.
draft warrant articles as part of the budget process.
So that's a 0.98% increase.
0.98 in appropriation, so less than 1% for appropriations.
That's
Pretty good.
Amy, just bear with me. This handout was a little harder, so if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to explain. So as far as the draft warrant articles that I would bring to the budget hearing, typically this is your golden sheet. So this is last year's. So Article 1 stays the same, which is your reports of agents, auditors, committees, or officers. 2, you have your typical contingency fund, and the reason it's at $1,000 typically is if you have an unanticipated expense, you have the authority to move it and to increase that if you need to. You do not have security upgrades next year. You do not have your energy management contracts. We do not have the additional educator, which we had talked about, which was the reading writing specialist. You will have, you can talk about the fund balance to the capital reserve fund. Is that something the board wants to continue with? Is if there's unreserved fund balance of up to $50,000, it goes into the capital reserve fund. If the money is there, the full 50 goes in. So it's not, you just don't take like 20, if you want to put 10 in there or something, if it's 50,000, all 50 goes in there. You did this last year, saving for bigger projects. So is that something the board wants to continue with?
I would vote yes.
Yes.
Yes, my only discussion is, do we want to add more? So this is not to be raised from taxes. This is only to be taken from unreserved
Correct.
funds. So if we have unreserved funds, we can change that number to 100,000 and it will not affect this year's budget.
Correct,
But
although it's more of a risk to get the painting done unless you want to pull it from next year's. It's up to you. I mean, we have districts that range anywhere from 10 to 100,000 a year into their
Well,
capital
yeah, we've
reserve.
got a big ticket coming up and I'd rather budget for that. I was dismayed by the surprise that people had when we had to do the roof last year. In fact, we had not budgeted for that. So I'd rather continue with a substantial contribution to the capital reserve fund. But we can still, if I'm not wrong, we could still use $50,000. I mean, if we're before the end of the year to do the painting, even if it's not in the budget, if it's left over, it just,
Right.
we wouldn't
We
have.
do that prior to.
Let's say there's 125 in the account. If we were to approve 100 would go in, but if we painted,
Yeah,
there
whatever
would only
is
be
there.
75
Yeah.
left and 75 would go in, but we'd have our painting done, right? So, I mean, I think this is still a good place to build up without affecting this year's tax revenue. And if there's any left over, it will be there the year after.
So did you want to stick with the 50 or increase that?
Would anyone support going to 100,000 there, just for discussion?
Not this year.
So it's not coming out of this year's taxes. Remember, it's any money that's left over at the end of the next budget. If we don't spend it, goes into the capital reserve
This year.
It's.
for this
it
year.
would be-
This year, okay.
It'll come out of
Okay, so it's this year.
fiscal year 21.
Okay.
Am I correct about that? Yeah.
And are you,
But if this passes, then we have to build it in as a line item the following year. Is that correct?
Into basically a savings account for your capital improvement.
And it does not get carried forward as an automatic. It's a revisited item every year.
So
Okay.
if we don't put extra money into the capital reserve fund, it's likely to go in as a revenue next year to decrease the amount of revenue we have to raise, right? Doesn't it show up as a line item? That's the top line on the revenue stream is the money that we didn't.
The unreserved fund balance.
Yes. Right? So this is money coming out of the unreserved fund balance to go into the capital reserve. So it does reduce.
Taxes.
It helps with your revenue as far as the following.
Yes.
Equalize the,
Right.
Make that backdate.
All right. I will propose that we stick with 50,000 then.
I second.
I'm good with that.
Can I ask a question about is this invested in any way, or does this just sit?
No, it just sits, and then when you're ready, say, and then you put an additional warrant article, say you're getting an HVAC system for $900,000 to remove that from the capital improvement.
Yeah, we expend from the account
reserve. Yeah,
when we haven't approved,
that would be a different
rather than
warrant
raising
article.
funds.
So it's a
from
savings
taxes.
until you put it on another warrant.
But we can't dip into that to paint, like the capital reserve, like we would have to vote
Oh, no,
to
no.
expend from that fund if we have a special project. You
Yeah.
can't just say, hey, we want to do this
Right.
to the building, we're gonna
Right.
take it out of the capital reserve fund. It's not
Right.
Can the school like,
liquid.
invest that money, or it just has to sit, like, can
It
you
just-
earn interest on it, or can you invest it in something where you?
No,
Invest
and Dan
50,000
can
to get
explain
back
that a lot
60.
more than I can.
It's,
But-
I remember him explaining
Yeah.
this, like there's a
Yeah,
very,
no.
there are very limited
Accessible.
investment opportunities for schools
That's
because
too bad.
it's a public entity and it's very risk averse.
I do have,
Yeah.
so I'm going to talk about one other warrant article that will help facilitate this conversation a little bit. You look at your pink sheet. Although
Thank
it
you
says,
for color coding.
yeah, this is a warrant article that I want to bring to your attention because it's something that Holderness and Hemi Baker voted in several years back. And it's to adopt, so it's to authorize indefinitely until specific, it's to retain year-end unassigned general funds in an amount not to exceed in any fiscal year 2.5% of the current year's net assessment pursuant to RSA 198.5 for the purpose of having funds on hand to be used as a revenue source for emergency expenditures and over expenditures under RSA 32:11, or to be used as a revenue source to reduce the tax rate. There's no new taxes raised for this article. So that came from Dan several years ago. On the back, you'll see what it could be used for. So if you had an emergency, like an unanticipated special ed student move in that you didn't have the funds for, instead of, all you'd have to have is a quick hearing, and you don't have to write a whole nother warrant article for it, and you can approve the funds to take out, and you can take up to 2.5% of what you have at the end of the year. So it's just another tool to use. And at the end of the year, Dan goes through that with you. It's like, okay, here's what you have. Here's what's going to the capital reserve fund. Here's the 2.5% where you can, so the high school committed, I think so they had the same issue with revenue where it was significant. They had a huge, over $600,000 in unreserved fund balance. They moved 270,000 over to offset that and committed that to the revenue side. So it helped that bottom line. So it gives the flexibility to do that. Once you vote this in, it's there for you to
Indefinitely,
use
Until
as
it's
long as you
rescinded.
like. So I don't know if you would
I do.
want an article like this.
I would vote that we move forward with this as a warrant for this year.
It's just another tool to use, and you don't have to use it.
I don't
if
feel
you-
like I fully understand it.
Creates a savings
I'm
account.
sorry, Dumbo, but I'm just
No,
not
it's-
getting it fully.
It's just basically another tool to retain up to 2.5%.
Why did we never have this before then?
That's a good
I
question.
don't know the answer to that. We
Okay.
do have a few districts, we're bringing it forward to all of our districts to consider.
Right.
Okay.
It has helped us. I oversaw it Holderness for several years. At the end of every year, they decide, it it doesn't add up over time.
It gives you
Like, just like don't
flexibility.
save 2.5% at like 100,000 and then turn
It's not that different
200,000.
than
It's just for
operating,
the next year in case you have it at an
Yeah.
emergency or something like that.
it's not that different than operating out of your checkbook, and then at the end of the year, you put a little into your savings account.
So it's another tool to help you with this process.
Okay.
So that's
Sounds
something
good
I
in theory
wanted
to
to,
me.
What's that? Yeah, I agree.
yes. Is
And it's
everybody-
And it's not very often that we have a lot of money left over. Last year was the year before, I think we had like $860 left over at the end of the year. So it's not the $300,000, Fran, that you see isn't something that's going to typically happen on a regular basis. So that's why it skews the numbers, because last year we had leftover money because it's money we didn't spend because of COVID. So it's skewed this year, but the previous year, I think our bottom line was like $860 left over that we had at the end of the year after everything was done. So it's not really ever going to be a huge number. Again, well,
So everybody's good with the 50,000?
Yeah,
For the capital improvement, the retained fund balance, your operating budget, I'll put in the new amount into that warrant article. And then the last piece would be, if there's a tentative agreement with your support staff, would be added to that.
Yep.
On top of it. So
Yep.
it's just an additional cost to be aware of. That's it. I'll have that ready for you at the budget hearing. I think that's all I have on budget. I just wanted to remind all of you, the budget hearing is on February 1st. At 7, so I asked that we have a board meeting at 6:15 prior to that. That if there is a tentative agreement to vote on, you would have to do that prior to the meeting, and then just to do regular, that would be our February board meeting.
Yes.
Is everybody good with that? Amy, are you good with that? Yes,
having a board meeting before the budget hearing at 6:15.
correct.
I'm putting in my calendar right now.
6:15, not 6 o'clock. If I'm-
6:15 is fine. It's just a quick business meeting, and then basically to prep for the hearing. And then we would have the budget hearing, possibly, I would suggest having it in the gym, so folks can be 6 feet apart instead of, we usually have it in the cafeteria, I just don't.
Yeah,
No,
let's do it in the gym.
Yeah.
The chair spread out further.
We are reaching out to the town as well to see if they are deciding on how they are gonna run town meeting, if they're gonna choose any of the alternatives, so that's something just to have on your radar. I do think with the history of the participants in the hearing and in the district meeting, you can accommodate distancing in the gym, but that's something that the town typically decides. So we are reaching out to all the towns right now to see what that is.
Other
There's
business?
a question in the chat. Jenny Lee asked if there was a motion to vote the attached warrant articles or just board consensus.
You can vote on the draft warrant articles if that would help. Yeah.
But we still have one more to add right after support staff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to do that at the next board meeting, right before the hearing.
Okay. And
Would
it's
move this-
February 1st is the next meeting.
I will move the slate of amendments as discussed.
I would second it.
All in favor?
Yay.
All right, the only thing under other business is I just want to let you know the audit turned out well and there were no findings. So it was a clean audit. So I can share that with you, and Amy, I'll need you to come in and sign that document whenever you get a chance.
Okay.
Yes. That's all I was sharing under that. I have nothing else under other business.
Privilege of the floor, number 2. Anyone in person like to speak? Anyone on Zoom? Oh, sorry, Jenny Tebow.
Jenny Tebow has her hand up.
Jenny, go ahead. You have to
Hi,
unmute
so this is Jenny Tebow. Oh, I'm not unmuted. I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So first, I just wanted to say how happy I am that we're taking the capital reserve seriously going forward. Second, I just wanted to say, as a parent, how important I view the specials. I know there's some required specials and some non-required ones, but after a week of vacation, my 7-year-old said he was most excited about going back to art. So I don't want to undervalue those in any way, shape, or form. And if it does mean that we have a slightly larger class size, we do need to remember, as you have pointed out, that those studies are under 20. They're not saying a small class size is 12. So we've been kind of spoiled. I'm not saying that's bad. We should definitely have small if we can, but I would rather have that. I also would just be very hesitant going forward in terms of things like spectators at games and things of that nature, because COVID is not over and we need to make sure that we are being responsible. And I know we are, but going forward, that we are being responsible about keeping our kids and our townspeople and our community safe. And not saying, oh, it's not so bad, we can slide in some things. So just something that I wanted to remind the board of.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Sarah has her hand up.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, all. I just actually wanted to echo the same thing Jenny said. If you're making decisions, I would prefer that you not cut specials. And I am comfortable with slightly higher class sizes. In fact, in talking with teachers, they generally tell me that 12 is almost harder than something like 15 or 17. With a smaller class, they actually struggle to make groups and do group work. So I'd also be in favor of keeping specials and then considering slightly higher class sizes when making those decisions. And that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Sarah?
I didn't get my camera and my mute fast enough. I just want to say that I'm always an advocate for smaller class sizes. I've been in teaching for 24 years, and I just wanted to say that and not have that be unsaid. Oh, there goes my video. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to put it on record. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay. We entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.